Hi all. Good match result but when Bryan vs Orton. Back from the break and out comes Daniel Bryan to a big pop for the main event. WWE World Heavyweight Champion Randy Orton is out next. Back from the break and Orton vs Christian is announced for SmackDown. Fans chant for Bryan. They go at it and Orton goes out. Orton comes back in and attacks but Bryan drops him. Bryan works on Orton's arm now. Fans chant for CM Punk now as Orton drops Bryan and stomps on him. Orton yells at fans as they chant for Bryan. Orton drops him with a shoulder tackle and poses to more boos. Bryan comes back with a takedown and tries to stomp on Orton in the corner but is backed off by the referee. Bryan wraps Orton's leg around the ring post and slams it. Bryan runs and dropkicks Orton's knee into the ring post. Bryan comes back in and continues working on Orton's leg. Orton bites Bryan to get him to let go of his leg. Orton with uppercuts now. Bryan backslides Orton out of nowhere for a 2 count. Bryan goes back to work on Orton's hurt leg. Orton goes to the floor for a breather but Bryan meets him and unloads. Bryan tosses Orton over the announcer's table and into Michael Cole. Bryan brings it back in the ring and takes him to the corner. Bryan takes Orton to the top and climbs up for a big Hurricane Rana. Bryan covers for a 2 count. Bryan with a modified surfboard submission now before stomping on Orton's leg. Bryan keeps control and applies a single crab. Orton crawls for the ropes but Bryan drags him back. Orton finally makes it to the rope and breaks the hold. Orton rolls to the floor and sells the knee injury. Bryan comes out but Orton kicks him and slams him on top of the fan barrier. Orton brings Bryan back and uncovers for a 2 count. Orton starts stomping now. Orton unloads in the corner but Bryan turns it around with kicks. Bryan counters and ducks a clothesline but Orton nails a powerslam. We go to commercial. Back from the break and Bryan is kicking away. Orton blocks a kick and nails a big throw. Bryan lands on his shoulder. They go back to the floor and Orton whips Bryan into the steel steps. Orton brings it back in for a 2 count and gets frustrated. Orton goes back to working on the arm. Orton keeps control but Bryan kicks out of another 2 count. Fans chant for Bryan as Orton focuses on the arm. Orton climbs up for a superplex but Bryan counters and blocks it. Bryan sends Orton to the mat with headbutts. Bryan nails a missile dropkick but lands on his bad shoulder. More back and forth. Bryan finally gets the yes lock applied. Orton gets his foot on the ropes and breaks the hold. Bryan with dropkicks in the corner. Orton blocks the third with a dropkick of his own. Orton nails the draping DDT but Bryan blocks the RKO. Bryan nails the top rope headbutt but Orton kicks out at 2. Kane comes out and gets on the apron but Bryan takes them both out. Kane charges but Bryan sends him into the steel steps. Bryan nails the flying knee on Orton and covers him for the non-title win. At last Daniel Bryan defeated Randy Orton. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.